35 people are killed at a military base near Lviv in western Ukraine, just 12 kilometers from the Polish border.
Thousands of protesters flocked to the streets of New York, Tel Aviv, Helsinki and Madrid denouncing the invasion of Ukraine.
The governor of Lviv, a city in western Ukraine, has said 35 people are now confirmed dead after a missile attack on an international peacekeeping and security center base on Sunday morning. Maxim Kozitsky said that a further 134 people were injured after the airstrikes on the facility in Yavoriv, a garrison city just 12 kilometers from the Polish border. The facility previously hosted training drills with NATO countries before the invasion.
That's why we keep asking NATO to close the sky, because we can't fight an enemy who doesn't even enter Ukraine but launches a cruise missile. So it's necessary to have a serious air defense system.
In a tweet from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he said that he had held talks with the Polish President Andrzej Duda and the Bulgarian Prime Minister Kirill Petkov, in which he updated them on Ukraine's defense and the crimes of the Russian aggressors. As Russian forces continue to advance in Ukraine, Ruslan Marcinkiv, the mayor of Ivano-Frankivsk in western Ukraine, says the Russian army launched an attack on the city's airport in the early hours of Sunday morning. Ukraine's state emergency services says at least one person died and one more was injured as a result of the shelling of a 9-story residential building in Cherniv, northeast of Kyiv. The Ukrainian military claim Russian forces are continuing to use civilian infrastructure for its military needs and are carrying out shelling on civilians in direct violation of international humanitarian law.
Day 18 of Russia's offensive in Ukraine started with more attacks here in the west of the country. Explosions could be heard from central Lviv in the early hours of Sunday, and a missile strike hit Yavoriv military base, an international military facility to the west of here, where NATO troops used to conduct military exercises alongside Ukrainian forces before they pulled out from Ukraine back in February. That military facility was now the grounds for Ukraine's new Foreign Legion, and it's unclear whether any foreigners were among the dozens killed in what is now the deadliest attack since the war started. Meanwhile, the airport in the city of Ivano-Frankivsk was hit for a second time in as many days, leaving people in this part of the country wondering if this is going to be the new focus of Vladimir Putin's offensive in this country as the military campaign widens in Ukraine. Hundreds of thousands of people travel to the city or through here seeking shelter from the bombardment in the east and in the capital, Kyiv, and are now wondering whether or not they're going to lose the last safe haven they had in the country. Annelies Borges from Lviv for Euronews.
Dozens of protesters flocked to Times Square on Saturday, condemning Russia's assault on Ukraine. Bracing New York City's freezing temperatures, Ukrainian citizens demanded world leaders to close the sky, following President Zelensky's repeated calls for a no-fly zone to be implemented.
Our fellows Ukrainians, they are suffering of those missile strikes and the airplane flying over our cities and killing innocent people, bombing maternity house. We just want that to be stopped, and we want people to live, because every human being is meant to live, not to die. And we're just asking for a little bit of support, closing those skies.
Meanwhile, Israel's refugee policy, which has placed a cap on the number of non-Jewish Ukrainian refugees allowed to stay in the country, has sparked outrage. Hundreds gathered in central Tel Aviv, calling for the quota to be scrapped and for an end to the war.
I think the world is not doing enough to help Ukraine, because Russia is a big, powerful country with very big army, and I think Ukraine need much more help, and I think including troops, perhaps, and also military help.
Moving north, police say some 4,000 demonstrators took to the streets of Helsinki in a show of solidarity for Ukraine. This comes as hundreds of Russians are crossing into Finland by the day on one of the few remaining routes out of the country in a bid to escape economic sanctions. And in Madrid, dozens of Russians gathered in front of the Russian embassy to rally against what they call the Putin regime and to denounce the invasion. Thousands of refugees are flocking to Poland, travelling without masks as they flee the war in Ukraine. But despite the country's poor vaccination rate, evacuees are not required to present a coronavirus vaccine certificate or proof of a negative COVID test. The head of the urban search and rescue mission says COVID is less important.
COVID
at this border crossing here in Mađarska is obviously not a priority. Not a priority for us and not a priority for refugees that are arriving. We mainly deal with small children with hypothermia and we treat urgent cases so that they can continue with their journey. Some refugees say their fears of contracting the virus have been replaced by the conflict. This woman says, in my opinion, COVID was a real disease, but after the war began in Ukraine, COVID disappeared. The war is a global issue and a bigger problem for humanity. Russia's assault on Ukraine has forced more than 2.5 million people to flee and seek refuge in other countries. But despite Russian troops pressing on with their offensive, some have decided to return home. Klara Ulganich, a Ukrainian pensioner, arrived in Hungary with the first wave of refugees, but she wants to return to the western city of Uzhhorod. I got a feeling. It's hard to put it into words, she says. I just can't say it. I was born there. That's my home. We had to leave, but now I am trying to go back and look around. My sons don't want me to go back, but I'm determined. So far, Hungary has accepted some 235,000 refugees, while 1.5 million people have crossed the border into Poland.
Shoppers across North Africa are stocking up on flour and semolina as fears grow over rising food prices because of the war in Ukraine. Morocco, Tunisia, and Libya all import most of their wheat from Ukraine and Russia, with Tunisia getting around half of its soft wheat from Ukraine and Libya getting around 75%. And while authorities in Tunisia say the country has enough wheat to last it for 3 months, prices are already starting to rise. According to this bakery owner, this area used to be filled with bags of flour, but now he has to rely on flour meant for the Middle Eastern pastry baklava. I buy a 10-kilo bag for 18 dinars in the stores, he added, while normally I buy the 50-kilo bags at 26 dinars at the wholesalers. And although the real effects of the Russian-Ukraine war haven't hit us, I'm worried. How will we work? The cost of semolina is also rising. According to a union of supermarket owners in Tunisia, the price for the wheat used to make couscous has jumped by 700% since the war began.
A dozen missiles have struck Erbil, the capital of the Kurdish-run semi-autonomous region of northern Iraq. The strike was close to a sprawling US consulate complex. The Kurdish K24 TV channel located nearby suffered damage to its studios. Iran's Revolutionary Guard claimed responsibility for the attack, saying it was a retaliation for an Israeli strike in Syria that killed 2 members of its force. One Iraqi official in Baghdad initially said several missiles had hit the embassy some 360 kilometres from the capital. But Law Ghaffari, the head of Kurdistan's foreign media office, says none of the missiles struck the facility. The health ministry in Erbil says that no casualties have been reported.
Long lines outside hospitals as China's northeastern region tackles a surge of COVID-19 cases. The spike is the worst COVID-19 outbreak in the country's mainland since February 2020. On Sunday, China reported nearly 3,400 new cases, double the amount from the previous day. In Shanghai, the country's largest city of 24 million people, officials temporarily closed schools and suspended its bus services. China follows a strict zero-COVID policy, which it enforces with travel restrictions, swift lockdowns, and mass testing when authorities discover new cases.